Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This is a very special day. We have an honored special guest, revered Swami Atmajnanananda Ji Maharaj. He is the monk in charge of our Washington, D.C. sub-center, so he's come all the way from D.C. to visit us here today. So we're all blessed to have him. He specifically requested that my bio be extremely short. So he only gave me like 3 facts. Okay, so he joined the order in 1981 at Trabuco Canyon in Orange County. And in 1996, he received his sannyasa from Swami Bhuteshananda Ji Maharaj. He was in Trabuco Canyon for that whole time, from 81 to 96. And 1 year later, after sannyasa in 1997, he was asked by the order to serve in the fledgling Washington, D.C. center, which he's been in charge of ever since. And he's been doing a wonderful job. I first met him in Belumat during the 150th celebrations in Belumat when I was a brahmachari, and he was very kind to me, and he invited me to visit the center. So I stayed there for a few days back in 2017 or 18. And there's a lot more I can mention, but he doesn't want me to mention it, but I'll say it anyway. Right before joining the order, he received a PhD in Sanskrit from the University of Pennsylvania. He's written a very important book on Jiva Goswami's Tattva Sandarbha in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, which is still cited by scholars. And he also is a very talented woodworker. He made the beautiful wooden shrine in the Washington, D.C. Center and in many of other centers as well. So please join me in welcoming Swami Atmajnanananda Ji.
It was almost a short introduction. Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. Is this okay? Can you all hear me? Yes, I cut my teeth at Southern California and had 16 wonderful years in Trabuco, and that's really the occasion for my coming. I'll be speaking in Trabuco about my reminiscences because this is the 75th anniversary of the monastery in Trabuco. So it was very nice to be here to see all of you. Some of you I've known from the very, very beginning, and many of you, of course, seeing for the first time. Anil brother, thank you for that nice introduction. Om ihasine shushyadu me shariram todaste masam pralayam chayatu aprapya bodhim bahukalpa dolabham naivasanatkaimadaschalishyate. Let this body wither away here where I sit. Let my skin, bones, and flesh all dissolve, unless I attain enlightenment, difficult to reach even in many ages. This body will not move from its seat. I came Thursday just in time to see the celebration here for Buddha Purnima. It's a very nice occasion, so I thought I would speak about Swami Vivekananda and Buddha. Buddha Purnima is the anniversary of what we call the thrice blessed day. The Buddha was born, he had his nirvana, his enlightenment, and he had his parinirvana. He gave up the body at the age of 80, all on that full moon day. We called it Buddha Purnima. So I thought I would start out, I'll give a little brief summary of the life of Buddha. It's well known to most of us. It's very inspiring, and after that I want to try to show this wonderful connection between the life and the personality of a Buddha and Swami Vivekananda, because the connection between the two is something very, very special. I think that we can get a very deeper understanding of Swamiji and Swamiji's heart and his compassion if we understand that love that he had for Buddha himself. And also, to me, this is something interesting, that the interest in Buddhism in India was, I think, awakened a little bit because of Swami Vivekananda. Yeah. So I'll try to touch on some of these different things. So this Buddha was then known as Gautam or Siddhartha. He was born in a small kingdom. In those days, there were lots of little kingdoms. It wasn't that it was a great big large area or anything, but a small kingdom. His birth was also considered something very special. He was born outside in some beautiful flower area. His mother, Maya, was there under the branches of a tree. So he had his birth that way, and they did his horoscope. And it was shown that either he would be a great king, leader or something, or he could renounce everything and become a monk. And his parents, like all parents, especially Indian parents, want somebody else's son to become a monk, but not their own son. So they understood that if somehow something was awakened in him, spirit of renunciation, if he saw anything that would trigger that those things were to be avoided. So he grew up in a very privileged, isolated type of life, barely left the palace compound and the garden and everything, and grew up in luxury, all types of enjoyments and pleasures. He was given in marriage to a beautiful young woman who was probably a distant cousin of his, Yashodhara, and everything was fine. Somehow it came into his mind that he wanted to see what exactly is there outside of this world. He had some curiosity. Something had to be awakened in him. He was very good friends with the charioteer. So his charioteer agreed to take him outside. So he had 4 trips outside of this compound, temple compound, or palace. And each one was very significant. The first time he saw an old man, somebody tottering and hardly able to stand up, and he was so protected, he'd never seen anything like that. And so he asked his charioteer, his driver, he said, "What is this?" He said, "This is an old man." And he said, "Oh, they get like that?" He said, "Yes, they get like that." And does it happen to everyone? It happens to everyone. Will it happen to me? It'll happen to you. It'll happen to everybody. So he was a little shaken. So he went back to the palace, and then sometime later, he thought, let's go for another trip outside. So he goes and he sees somebody by the side of the road in terrible pain, with some type of terrible disease, and he said, "What is this?" He said, "It's a sick person." He said, "Oh, a sick person? What is this idea of a sick?" Yeah, eventually everyone will get sick, and there'll be some suffering and some pain. This is part of life. So again, he was a little bit shaken, and he went back. So the whole time something is working in his mind. He wants to go out a third time. This time he sees a long procession, and he sees people carrying something on their shoulders covered in white. And he says, "What is this?" He said, "Somebody's died, and they're taking his body to be burnt in the cremation ground. And everyone is weeping and wailing." So again, it was another shock. It's hard to imagine. He's probably 16, 18, something like that he's completely unaware of these things. He said, "What is this?" "A dead person." They said, "Oh, a dead person." And then he says, "Oh, we'll all have to die one day, right?" And they said, "Yes," his charioteer. So he went back to the palace. And now, in the meantime, he finds his wife is pregnant, his young wife, about to give birth to a child, but he wants to go out one more time. This time, he sees a young man dressed in ochre cloth, and not looking one way or the other, his face beaming with joy. And he says, "Who is this young man?" And he says, "This is a monk. This is someone who's renounced everything in going in search of truth. He doesn't have any attachment to the world, anything, that only caring for, searching for that enlightenment, for that ultimate truth." And then, as they go to me, he says, "This is a wise person. I would like to be a person like that." So he goes back to the palace, and just at that time finds that a child has been born, son, and he names him Rahul. That means an obstacle, because now he knows, yes, yeah, and now he knows that he's not meant to lead that type of life, that this will really be a kind of bondage for him. So that night there was a big celebration in the palace with singing and dancing and food and drink and everything. And he goes and he sees everybody, almost like demons, he says, rolling on the ground, with too much drinking and eating, and it was like living hell for him. So he made a resolve that night that he'll renounce everything. He'll renounce the world. So we went silently, bade good night, goodbye to his young wife and newborn son, and then he went out. He had the charioteer take him out. He went out on horseback. He gave away his horse. He still had his sword. He cut his hair with his sword. He found a beggar. He exchanged clothes with the beggar. And then he went out just in search of truth. So this begins this very long period of spiritual practice and long years of meditation. He went from one group to another group. He was with some ascetics who were so strict that they would eat food equivalent to a mustard seed each day. Of course, these are stories that we hear. Yeah, and that he became so thin you could see his backbone through the front. So they were all very, very austere and spending all of his time in deep meditation, trying to realize the real nature of reality. And finally, he became so weak that he virtually passed out. And there was a young woman who happened to see what was happening. Her name was Sujata, and she fed him with a little bit of rice pudding. And the other monks were horrified. They said, what is this for a monk taking some nice, luxurious thing from a strange woman? So they all left him. And that's the night when he made that vow, the verse that I first chanted at the beginning, that I will sit here, I won't get up from my seat until and unless I have realized the truth. And then this is that famous night that he was symbolically attacked by all these demons, tempting him to go back to the other type of life. And of course, internal doubts and temptations, everything came to his mind. And then they say, by the time the morning came throughout the whole night, that he had become now the Buddha. Buddha means the awakened one. So this is a basic story that we know about the life of Buddha. After that, he felt some call to spread the teachings. And his main teaching was not a philosophical or metaphysical type of teaching. He was very, very practical. This is one of the reasons why Swamiji liked him so much. His main teaching was that there's suffering in this world, and there's a way to go beyond this suffering. And there's a path that one can follow, and if one follows that, then one can also become a Buddha. That he was a real egalitarian. This was open to everyone. Now, we have to understand that at this time in history, there was some exclusiveness to the Vedantic or Vedic tradition, and he came to break open the gates. He was not one to follow any of these strict rules about who can study the Sanskrit and Upanishads, who was qualified for to take sannyasa, even who was qualified for realization. So this is a great turning point in the history of the religions of India. My personal feeling is that this is that transition from the Vedic period to the modern Hindu period. This is my real feeling, that gradually what was considered to be the sacrificial period with Yajna and all fire sacrifices and the old ancient deities that we have, Indra and Agni and Vayu, that somehow they're going to gradually give way to what we know as kind of modern Hinduism. And when we read things like Gita, teachings in the Gita about how everyone is eligible for God realization, these are all part of this tradition, I feel, that comes out of this almost reaction. And Swamiji also had this reaction, what he called priestcraft. Yeah. So that the life of Buddha represents a great turning point in the history of Indian religion that way. there are certain stories that we know about the life of the Buddha that illustrate how practical he was. One of the reasons why he wasn't interested much in giving any philosophical types of teachings, what is the nature of the self, what is the nature of God, because he remained silent mostly. The reason was that he thought these were kind of distractions for people. When we look at the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and how many times he tells M that don't reason anymore, don't get too involved with all of these questions that don't have answers. He's a vichara. He says, don't practice this type of vichara anymore. That dive deep, have some type of realization. So he emphasized that, and this is why he remained silent very often, because there were so many questions in those days. What is the nature of the self? What is the nature of God? Is there a permanent self? Is everything changing? And mostly he remained silent. And because he remained silent, all different schools came up. And there's so many intricate schools of Buddhist thought that range from, yes, there is no self, there's no God, denying all of these things, to these Mahayana schools that are very similar to Vedanta also. But he was practical. He was very practical. He gave that illustration that if someone is shot with a poison arrow, and we know he has a very short time to live, and that person says, before you pull out the arrow and get the doctor, I want to know who shot me, where they come from, what village they're from, what their family is, what caste they belong to, all of these questions. And the doctor says, well, by the time you get these answers, you'll be dead. Yeah. So he was the physician who said, yeah, pull out the arrow and heal yourself. So it was very, very practical. One story that I especially like, there was a young woman named Kisa Gotami, and she had a child born to her that died almost immediately after he was born. So she was practically mad, going from place to place, carrying the baby and asking everyone, can you bring my baby back to life? And they all said, your baby's died, what can we do? We feel very bad for you, we can't do anything. So finally somebody said, you go to Buddha. He's there. So she went to him and said, everyone says you can help me, can you bring my baby back to life? And he says, yes, I can do it. But first, I want you to go from house to house, and I want you to beg, ask, you just have to bring back a handful of mustard seed. So she was so happy. She thought it was very wonderful. This will be a very easy thing. And then he added, but it has to be from a house where no one has ever died. Yeah. Now, it's not like today where people build a house and they're the first ones who live there and everything. These are ancestral things. Yeah. So she thought, okay, this will be possible. So each house she went to, when she said first, do you have any mustard seed? They said, yes, of course. And then she said, has anyone ever died here? And they would, yes, recently, my mother passed away, this and that. So she had to sit through long stories, house after house. And then finally she realized that, yeah, death comes to everyone, that we have to learn to accept these things. And now she understood why he sent her on that journey to get the mustard seed. So she went back, and he said, have you brought the mustard seed? And then she said, no, but I've come to take refuge with you. And now I know that life is full of suffering. Now, the Buddhist philosophy is a little bit pessimistic from that point of view, but we have to remember that there's the joy that comes from enlightenment was more important. But we have to recognize that things are inevitable in this lifetime. This is another great teaching of Holy Mother, how she emphasized forbearance. She used to say, if one takes a human body, there'll be suffering, there'll be pain and suffering. It's inevitable. God himself can't do anything to prevent it. So sometimes we have to just learn to accept these things and know that happiness will come from some deeper place and not from anything external. So this is one of the stories that I really like, this story of the Sikisi Gautami and the mustard seed. Now, I want to get to Swami Vivekananda and talk a little bit about the special connection between these two great souls. I really feel that Swamiji was really a Buddha himself. And the compassion that he felt, that he had for other people, we almost don't have a second comparison other than the Buddha himself. And so many things that Swamiji also was iconoclastic. He didn't care for following old things just because they're old ancient traditions and everything. See, Buddha, he went against so many things that main reason why Buddhism became considered non-orthodox, heterodox system is that he didn't accept the authority of the Vedas. He said, why do we have to rely on anything else? We have our own experience of truth. And Swamiji also, he said, don't believe in something just because you read it in the old books or somebody says, you find it out for yourself, realize it yourself. And he wanted everything to be taught in the vernacular. That in those days, the religion was stuck with the small groups that Sanskrit-speaking, these Brahmin boys could go in the forest with the guru, and everyone else was stuck. They could lead a good spiritual life and everything, but this adhikara system, that there had to be some special type of exclusiveness. So the Buddha opened up the gates for that. Swamiji wanted to do the same thing. He said he wanted to spread the teaching of Vedanta, broadcast throughout the world without any distinction. Everyone is eligible for that. So many beautiful connections that we see between them. And Swamiji definitely was influenced by Buddha himself, that he knew quite a bit about him. It was loved the personality of Buddha. And if we want to really look for some precedent for some of the social service work that's done in our order, many people tried to connect it with Swamiji seeing the work of Christian missionaries. Now, that's quite possible that he also appreciated their work. But the early Buddhist tradition, the monks of that period, they also had universities, and they also would do some type of healing and things like that. And then for a long time after that, it was something that was not to be done by sannyasins. They kept themselves away from society. They didn't do hospital work and things like that. When Swamiji initiated that in our order, it was highly controversial, even among some of his brother disciples. So these are all things that I think show to a certain extent the influence of the Buddhist tradition with Swamiji. And then this converse theory that I have, that Swamiji really helped to revive the interest in Buddha himself. Now, this was also a period when Sir Edwin Arnold wrote at Light of Asia. So it was, that was also a little bit significant. And also Girish Ghosh, he wrote a play, so at least in Bengal, on the life of a Buddha. So there was some interest at that time. But most people knew very little about Buddhism. We know that Sri Ramakrishna practiced all of the religious traditions that he was familiar with, that he came into contact with at that time. But not a single Buddhist teacher showed up. He didn't practice anything about it. He had some understanding, but very little. Mostly he asked questions about what did the Buddha teach and everything. He asked Narendra, our future Swami Vivekananda. So somehow Buddhism virtually disappeared in India. It virtually disappeared in India. Why is a bit of a controversial subject? A combination of many factors, of course. For one thing, the Buddha was never really considered an outsider. And in the Puranic ideal, he's considered one of the 10 avatars also. And the teachings really well within this huge umbrella that we can call modern Hinduism or Vedanta, well within it, only because he didn't accept the ultimate authority of the Vedas, was it considered to be something heterodox. So very easy to be assimilated back into the Hindu tradition. And of course, there's a Muslim invasion. Then there was a whole period of these philosophical debates, Shankaracharya and others. Somehow, the Buddhism, it survived outside of India, but not India itself. So, Swamiji helped bring back, I feel, this interest in the Buddha and the wonderful Buddhist tradition in India. The other figure who was very important was Dharmapala. Dharmapala, he was from Sri Lanka, the Buddhist, who spoke at the Parliament of Religions with Swamiji. They developed a very nice friendship, which unfortunately fell apart a little bit later. But he started this Mahabodhi Society, and in all places in Calcutta. And even though, as I say, there really was no Buddhist tradition at that time at all. All of the Buddhist places were from monks who came from outside. If you go to Bodh Gaya, you'll see every country has a huge, beautiful temple. Of course, I went a long time ago. I don't know. I went in 1972 for the first time. And there was only one kind of small Birla temple for the represent Hinduism, or the Indian tradition. All the others were from Tibet and Japan and everything. But during Swamiji's time, and remember, he's not yet Swami Vivekananda, Narendra, especially during this Kashipur period when Sri Ramakrishna was so ill, that there was so much interest in the Buddhist literature and the life and teaching of Buddhists. Swamiji read so much of that and had a tremendous desire to delve deeply into the life of Buddha. We have to remember one thing, that Swamiji was a Kshatriya, that he had some deep pride in his warrior background. And Buddha was also like that. So that I think there was a very strong connection between these two great personalities. Yeah, then when we get to this Kashipur period, see, Sri Ramakrishna, he had developed that cancer in his throat, and he had been moved to a couple of places earlier, and then they found a very nice and garden house, a kind of vacation house, and he was moved there. Narendra and many of the future monastic disciples, they lived there to nurse him and help him. But during this time, there was tremendous interest in the life of Buddha. So much so that Narendra decided, without telling anybody else, without telling Sri Ramakrishna, that he and two other disciples, Kali, who became Swami Atmajnanananda, and Tarak, who became Swami Shivananda, that they secretly went off to Bodh Gaya. And because Swamiji had that great desire, and they meditated under, there's an offshoot of the Bodhi tree that the Buddha was supposed to have attained enlightenment while sitting under that tree, and then Swamiji had some wonderful experience there. And even before that, during this period, that Swamiji had some type of vision. I have that here someplace. I want to read that. Yeah, this is something that we read in Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master. Swami Sharananda, this is from a conversation he had with Swamiji. Swamiji saying, "When I kept my mind still and devoid of all objects, there flowed in it a current of serene bliss. Under its influence, I felt a sort of intoxication for a long time, even after the end of the meditation. So I did not feel inclined to leave my seat and get up immediately. One day, when I was sitting in that condition, at the end of the meditation, I saw the wonderful figure of a monk appear suddenly from where I did not know, and stand before me at a little distance, filling the room with a divine effulgence. He was in ochre robes with the kamandalu, water pot, in his hand. His face bore such a calm and serene expression of inwardness, born of indifference to all things, that I was amazed and felt much drawn to him. He walked towards me with a slow step, his eyes steadfastly fixed on me, as if he wanted to say something. But I was seized with fear and could not keep still. I got up from my seat and opened the door and quickly left the room. The next moment I thought, why this foolish fear? I became bold and went back into the room to listen to the monk, who, alas, was no longer there. I waited long in vain, feeling dejected and repented that I had been so stupid as to flee without listening to him. I have seen many monks, but never have I seen such an extraordinary expression on any other face. That face has been indelibly printed on my heart. It may have been a hallucination, but very often I think that I had the good fortune of seeing Lord Buddha that day. Yeah, so as I say, sometime after this, he had that tremendous desire to go to Bodh Gaya, and had some wonderful type of experience there. This is from the life of Swami Vivekananda by Eastern and Western disciples. He, meaning Narendra, had saturated himself with Buddhist lore for the time being. He was a Buddhist in spirit, the towering intellect of the enlightened one, the eminent sanity of his views, his uncompromising demand for truth, his burning renunciation, his compassionate heart, his sweet, deep, and luminous personality, his sublime morality, and the manner in which he struck the balance between metaphysics and human character. All these had aroused tremendous enthusiasm in Naren, and this had spread to the other disciples. So this is early April 1886. They finally made this trip to Bodh Gaya. They had been given as a Garawa cloth informally by Sri Ramakrishna without taking any type of monastic vows, so to be a Jahoma, anything like that. So the three of them, they wore the ochre cloth. They went as wandering monks and walked and went to Gaya, and then walked from there to Bodh Gaya. Gaya, of course, is very, very famous for, in general, the people go there to make offerings to departed ancestors. But this is also the place where Sri Ramakrishna's father had that vision that God would come to be born to him as his own child. That's why they named him Godadhar. And also Chaitanya Deva, when he went to Bodh Gaya, also to make offerings for his departed father, that he had his conversion there also. So there's something very special and holy about Gaya. But Bodh Gaya is a bit of a walk from there, so they went there, and they went on foot from there to Bodh Gaya. And the other monks, who, not yet monks, but disciples who were still back in Kashipur with Sri Ramakrishna, they were a bit shocked. Oh, Naren has left. How could he leave in the midst of Sri Ramakrishna needing service day and night? But he had such a tremendous desire to go there. So Sri Ramakrishna said, don't worry, they'll be back. That I've drawn a circle, they won't be able to go outside of it. Yeah, they'll be back. And within a few days, of course, he was right. So he knew that this Naren couldn't leave him at that time. Although he did have plans. There was another incident unrelated to this, but where Narendra had decided that, yes, he should renounce everything and leave. Sri Ramakrishna knew he had some presentiment that his beloved Narendra was about to leave him. So he sang this very beautiful song, a Bengali song, that Radha saying to Krishna, please, for my sake, please don't go, because he had to go to Mathura. And then Narendra understood, and Sri Ramakrishna understood, and both of them crying, and then he stayed at that time. Yeah, this Narendra, our Swami Vivekananda, so strong and bold and fearless, really had a very, very tender, sweet, loving nature and compassionate heart. He was given to tears and crying very often, even. So, anyhow, Sri Ramakrishna knew that they would come back, and they stayed for a few days and sat under that same Bodhi tree. And then Narendra had this wonderful experience that he didn't divulge very much what happened, but he was stirred to such an extent, and when he came out of his meditation, he was sitting next to this Tarak, who became Swami Shivananda, and embraced him. Now, maybe he saw something in him also, but exactly what happened was very difficult to say. But we have some feeling that some deep experience took place at that time. Some very deep experience took place, and that was very influential, perhaps another vision of Buddha, or he saw something, as I say, in Swami Shivananda. In any event, they returned back to Kashipur. And then there's an entire chapter in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna about all of the conversations. Sri Ramakrishna was very curious. Oh, what did he look like? Because there's some images and statues there. And what were the teachings of Buddha and everything? So he didn't know very much. He knew a little bit. And Sri Ramakrishna, of course, he had this wonderful insight into everything. When he would ask these questions, did he believe in God? Did he believe in the self? All of this. And then Sri Ramakrishna said this ultimate reality. We have two terms, sat and asat. That which exists, that which doesn't exist, or the real and the unreal, however we understand it. He said this ultimate reality is beyond both of these concepts. And then another time he said it's actually between sat and asat. And he had this wonderful understanding that whether we say purna or whether we say shunya, this Buddhist philosophy talks about this emptiness. Now, in Vedanta, if emptiness means non-existence, then they won't accept it. If it means the nature of Brahman is that it's empty, then it's perfectly in conformity with this idea of Brahman. That is, it's pure, it's perfectly empty. There's no content within it. That consciousness is like the mirror. Mirror has no content within it unless someone's standing before it, then they'll see their own image. They'll walk away, and again, it's perfectly pure and clean and empty. So this idea of emptiness and this idea of fullness, there's purna and shunya. These are perfectly consistent. There's no real conflict between that. So Sri Ramakrishna, he had that understanding that this is also another way of looking at reality. Looking at it from one side, we can say purna, infinite, pure, full, everything. The other side, we can say empty, that there's nothing clouding it, perfectly stainless from that type of point of view. Towards the end of Swamiji's life, Swami Vivekananda, he developed a very nice friendship with a Japanese scholar and artist, and he did types of temple restoration work and everything. His name was Okakura, and this Okakura wanted Swamiji to visit him in Japan. Swamiji wasn't well enough, so he came to see Swamiji, and the last pilgrimage that Swamiji went on took him to Bodh Gaya again. So that was the first, really, we can say, and the last. And this Josephine MacLeod, she was the one really who kind of connected the two of them together. And so Swamiji brought him to India. He went to Bellarmine, and they had a very beautiful connection. I'm reading from some reminiscences of Josephine MacLeod. She was one of the closest Western disciples of Swami Vivekananda, although she didn't call herself exactly a disciple, but really she was. In Japan, I made the acquaintance of Okakura Kakuzu, who had founded the fine arts Bichutsuin School of Painting in Tokyo. He was very anxious to have Swami come over, that means Swami Vivekananda, and be his guest in Japan. But Swami refusing to come, Mr. Okakura accompanied me to India to meet him. One of the happy moments of my life was when, after a few days at Bellermut, Mr. Okakura said to me rather fiercely, "Vivekananda is ours. He is an Oriental. He is not yours." Then I knew there was a real understanding between them. A day or two after, Swamiji said to me, "It seems as if a long-lost brother has come." Then I knew there was a real understanding between these two men. And then after this final pilgrimage, she wrote, "When the winter began to set in, he, Vivekananda, was so ill as to be confined to bed, yet he made one more journey, lasting through January and February 1902, when he went first to Bodh Gaya and next to Varanasi. It was a fit ending to all his wanderings. He had arrived at Bodh Gaya on the morning of his last birthday, January 29th. How was that? On the morning of, his last birthday. Huh? January 29th. Well, okay, yes. And nothing could have exceeded the courtesy and hospitality of the head of the monastery. Here, as afterwards at Varanasi, the confidence and affection of the Orthodox world were brought to him in such measure and freedom that he himself stood amazed at the extent of his empire in men's hearts. Bodh Gaya, as it was now the last, had also been the first of the holy places he had set out to visit. And it had been in Varanasi some few years back, when he was an unknown monk, that he had said farewell to one with the words, "Till that day when I fall on society like a thunderbolt, I shall visit this place no more." That was the Holy Mother. When we see the things that Swamiji said, because when Swamiji came to the West, he spoke about Buddha quite often. Actually, he spoke about Buddha more than he spoke about Sri Ramakrishna. He spoke in such glowing terms that we see how Swamiji loved the character of Buddha. Not so much the Buddhist teachings, and really the Buddhist teachings, we can't really say which ones really represent his views. His view was really that philosophy takes a back seat to practice and experience. When it came to philosophy, then he liked Vedanta, all the things we have in Upanishads and the later teachings and everything. But this personality and compassion, the compassion of Buddha, was the thing that drew him more than anything else. This hatred of privilege and exclusiveness that he saw in the Buddhist tradition. This, again, was one of the dominant themes in Swamiji's life. And this fight against priestcraft and exclusiveness, all of these things. So, when we look at Swamiji's relationship with two of the great figures, Buddha and Shankaracharya, that Shankaracharya represented, for Swamiji, the highest intelligence, and Buddha the greatest heart. So he used to say that this is the ideal person is that combination, the heart of a Shankaracharya, the head of the Shankaracharya and the heart of the Buddha. And really, this was Swamiji. This is, if we want an example of that rare combination, it was Swami Vivekananda himself. One of the lectures that Swamiji gave in Detroit was on Buddha. And he said, "Of course, I do not endorse all his philosophy. I want a good deal of metaphysics for myself. I entirely differ in many respects, but because I differ, is that any reason why I should not see the beauty of the man? He was the only man who was bereft of all motive power. There were other great men who all said they were incarnations of God himself, and that those who wouldn't believe in them would not go to heaven. But what did Buddha say with his dying breath? None can help you. Help yourself. Work out your own salvation. He said about himself, Buddha is the name of infinite knowledge, infinite as the sky. I, Gautama, have reached that state. You all will reach that state too if you struggle for it. Bereft of all motive power, he did not want to go to heaven, did not want money. He gave up his throne and everything else and went about begging his bread through the streets of India, preaching for the good of men and animals with a heart as wide as the ocean. Yeah, Buddha was willing to give up his own body in place of an animal who was meant to be offered at that time. And Swamiji, I was reading recently about this menagerie of animals that he had at Bellermont at the end of his life, that it was like a little zoo. He had so many goats and sheep and geese and ducks and all sorts of dogs, and he really almost had a deeper connection with the animals than with the people. He was a great lover of them. And there's so many very sweet, nice connections between the two of them. The other important thing is this non-exclusiveness. This Buddha, first of all, I doubt if he knew Sanskrit. Of course, we don't know these things or anything, but in those days, this was as I say, exclusive. These Brahmin boys would learn all of these things and everything, but he was very particular that everything be done in the vernacular so that everybody could understand. And most of the canon, Buddhist canon, at least the early canon, is in Pali. It was a language that everybody understood at that time. So this was something also that was very dear to Swamiji, this egalitarian view. No one has any exclusive right. Some of the lectures I like best that Swamiji gave were on privilege. He gave some lectures when he was in London on privilege and how he hated this idea that anyone should have any privilege over anybody else. So this kind of iconoclastic spirit, a little bit, this we see very much in the life of both of them. Yeah, and this compassion towards all beings, including animals. Swamiji said, he, meaning Buddha, was the only man who was ever ready to give up his life for animals to stop a sacrifice. He once said to a king, if the sacrifice of a lamb helps you to go to heaven, sacrificing a man will help you better, so sacrifice me. The king was astonished, and yet this man was without any motive power. He stands as the perfection of the active type, and the very heights to which he attained shows that through the power of work, we can also attain to the highest spirituality. Another great teaching of Swamiji, that he was more than a karma yogi. The very traditional idea of karma yoga is that we perform work without any attachment to purify the heart so we can have some high realization. It's not a very high ideal, actually. There's a little bit of selfishness there. Swamiji's idea was that we serve, that of course we find this in Gita and everything, but we serve as a type of worship, and the highest type of worship, we heard that beautiful song in the beginning, is seeing God within all beings, and then it's no longer karma yoga, then it's worshiping God through service, seeing God dwelling within all beings and serving them. So this idea of Buddha being the ideal karma yogi, Swamiji means in that sense. Not that one has to even have a conception of God to be compassionate. See, very often we have this idea that unless we see the divine dwelling within all beings, then what impetus do we have to be nice and kind to other people? The Buddhist tradition really, I think, teaches us that we don't need any metaphysical reason to be compassionate to other people. We look at the life of Dalai Lama, compassion is almost the religion of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And all it takes is a pure heart. All it takes is understanding that we all have the same experience of suffering and misery in the world. And if we can alleviate that, then this will be the highest type of service that we can do. So, for Swamiji, the life of Buddha was proof that one doesn't need philosophy. One doesn't even need to believe in a personal God. One doesn't have to have any type of strong metaphysics. One simply has to have sincerity, a loving heart, this desire, longing to realize something higher, something deeper in life, to take this life as something very serious, and to understand something can be attained in this lifetime, that we can transcend this ordinary worldly type of life that we have. In one of his lectures, Swamiji said, "To many the path becomes easier if they believe in God. But the life of Buddha shows that even a man who does not believe in God, has no metaphysics, belongs to no sect, and does not go to any church or temple, and is a confessed materialist, even he can attain to the highest. We have no right to judge him. I wish I had one infinitesimal part of Buddha's heart. Buddha may or may not have believed in God. That does not matter to me. He reached the same state of perfection to which others come by bhakti, love of God, yoga, or jnana, knowledge. Perfection does not come from belief or faith. Talk does not count for anything. Parrots can do that. Perfection comes through the disinterested performance of action." So for Buddha, and for Swamiji, this idea of compassion was more important than any type of philosophical understanding that we have. And Swamiji was very fond of saying that God is not to be found in doctrines or dogmas, or to be found with that reality dwelling within our hearts. So, this head of Shankaracharya and heart of Buddha, this was a theme in Swamiji's life. There was a nice letter that he wrote to Swami Atmajnanananda. Swami Atmajnanananda had really a unique relationship with Swamiji. This power of attraction that Swamiji had for his brother disciples is something just amazing. And especially this Swami Atmajnananda, if you read about his life, he had such a longing to see, when they were all wandering through India, such a longing to see Swamiji that he went from place to place. Now, Swamiji didn't want anybody to come near him at that time. He wanted to be perfectly alone, travel alone, completely dependent on what chance would bring, not relying on anybody or anything. But Swami Atmajnananda, he would go place to place, and each time they would say, "Oh, he was here, he left for this other place." And walking on foot, and he would go to the next place. And he said, "Oh, Swamiji just left." And it went on for weeks until finally they met, and they were so happy. And then Swamiji loved him so much. One of his letters, he says, "Somehow I feel that I love you more than any of the others." It's a very beautiful letter. So this is one of the letters that he wrote. And the Swami Atmajnananda was the first one to really take up this idea of service to living beings as worship of God in our order, starting this earlier in Khetri, but starting this orphanage at the time of famine in a place called Sargachi in Bengal. And Swamiji was so happy and so proud of him for doing that. Anyhow, this is a letter that he wrote, Swamiji to Swami Atmajnananda. "What is now wanted is the combination of the greatest heart with the highest intellectuality, of infinite love with infinite knowledge. Existence without knowledge and love cannot be. Knowledge without love and love without knowledge cannot be. What we want is the harmony of existence, knowledge, and bliss infinite, for that is our goal. We want harmony, not one-sided development. And it is possible to have the intellect of a Shankara with the heart of a Buddha. I hope we shall all struggle to attain that blessed combination." So this is really what we find in this personality of Swami Vivekananda, that there's a brilliant intellect that he had, and this compassionate heart. And for me, at least, Swamiji's heart was far more important than his intellect. That this is what captured everybody. Even no matter how much he could scold his brother disciples and his own disciples, how they loved him and how they couldn't bear to be away from him. And how when he came back to Brother Mutt, traveling from the West, how they were so thrilled to have him there. And after he passed away, how difficult it was for all of them. Okay, I will close with just reading a few more things that Swamiji said regarding Buddha. What Buddha did was to break wide open the gates of that very religion which was confined in the Upanishads to a particular caste. What special greatness does his theory of nirvana confer on him? His greatness lies in his unrivaled sympathy. The high orders of samadhi, etc., that lend gravity to his religion are almost all there in the Vedas. What are absent there are his intellect and heart, which have never since been paralleled throughout the history of the world. He alone can be religious who dare say, as the mighty Buddha once said under the bo tree, when this idea of practicality appeared before him, and he saw that it was nonsense, and yet could not find a way out. When the temptation came to him to give up his search after truth, to go back to the world and live the old life of fraud, calling things by wrong names, telling lies to oneself and to everybody, he, the giant, conquered it and said, "Death is better than a vegetating, ignorant life. It is better to die on the battlefield than to live a life of defeat." This is the basis of religion. When a person takes this stand, he is on the way to find the truth. He is on the way to God. So this is my little tribute to Buddha and how that spirit of Buddha manifested itself in Swami Vivekananda. So I thank you all for coming. And nice to be with all of you again after a long time. Is there some announcements to be made now, or,
I think the music
or the song? Okay, okay.
Is there a bulletin up here? Yes. Can you pass it? Thank you. We're all very grateful to revered Swami Atmajnanananda for his inspiring talk on the life and teachings of Buddha, the connections between Buddha and Swami Vivekananda, Swamiji's great love for Buddha, and this very interesting theory, I hadn't really heard it before, that Swamiji played an important role in popularizing Buddha and Buddhism in India. So thank you so much, Maharaj. Some announcements right after this talk. So right now, there are refreshments outside, so please help yourself to refreshments. And after refreshments, there's a question and answer session with revered Swami Atmajnanananda in the living room of the greenhouse right here, next to the bookstore. And a heads up on upcoming events. Tomorrow, Memorial Day, 27th May, there's a Memorial Day retreat. From 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., there's a collective reading of the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, online and in person. It's a very unique event where everybody takes, both in person and online, will take a certain page range from the complete works, and we'll read through the entire 9 volumes silently in the course of the morning, in that 3-hour period. And in the afternoon, Revered Sarvadevanji asked me to organize a special afternoon program. Devotees reflect on Swami Vivekananda, where we're flipping the script. So instead of monks talking to devotees, devotees will be reflecting on Swami Vivekananda. So that program starts at 2:15 p.m. tomorrow. And 10 devotees will speak for 5 minutes apiece on a text of their choice from the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. So please come for our functions tomorrow. And next Sunday, June 2nd at 11 a.m., Swami Sarvadevananji will give the Sunday talk on the meaning of life. Thank you.
I'd mention the
What else?
PBS documentary. The details are on the flyer.
Okay. And there's a new PBS documentary on Swami Vivekananda out called America's First Guru. It's already started airing on PBS. There's a flyer right outside this door, which you can check out for details. If you get the PBS app on your phone, you can just watch it anytime. Thanks.
Close for the chant.
Oh,
And then I'll
okay.
play some music and you can go to the front and greet the people at the door.
Om sarve bhavantu sukhinas sarve santu niramaya sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kashchit dukhabhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shanti. May all beings be happy, may all be free from disease, may all realize the highest good, may none suffer from misery. Om peace, peace, peace be unto all.